Hello and welcome to Backstage with Actors Training Ground. I'm your host, Tanner Lagasca. Today's guest is a staple in the North Carolina theater scene. With countless productions under his belt, he is one of the most respected actors in the area and is always working as an actor or director. Previous roles include Charlotte in I Am My Own Wife, the title role of Hamlet, David Frost in Frost Nixon, and the role of Jacob Marley in A Christmas Carol, which he has been performing for 26 years. In 2013, he founded Honest Pint Theater, inviting patrons to take in local theater and drink deep. Please welcome David Henderson.
Hi. I like to
Hey,
just
David.
appear. It's so fun to just appear.
I know, right? Like it's like, well, that's your way of walking on stage, see? So,
Yeah, exactly.
and imagine thunderous applause happening as it does it.
Oh, I don't know. It's so weird. I don't know when we're going to hear that thunderous applause again
Oh,
anytime soon.
I know. Well, we can imagine it in our heads,
Oh,
and
yeah. We're
and
good at
and
that.
and that's great. Yeah, right. Well, we're all good at that. David, you have been acting almost your entire life. In fact, you
Yeah.
did a show when you were 5 years old, playing that wonderful role of the mayor of Munchkin City. At 5 years old, though, and I'm sure the experience was good, but it's you say that was the bug that got you started. What was
Yeah.
it about that experience that just drew you to the theater at such a young age?
Well, it's a great question. And it is. So I was five, and in my town, I grew up in a very small town, Kinston, North Carolina, about 20 some thousand people. And we had a very active summer theater program and a theater program. My high school drama teacher ran all of this. And when I was five, he was directing this production of The Wizard of Oz, and my babysitter at the time was going to be in it. And she got me involved, and somehow or another, I ended up as the mayor of Munchkinville, Munchkinland, right? And it was a great experience. I mean, it was a big cast. Everybody was older than me. There were lots of kids, and it was fun, which was part of it. But I learned. So it's a weird story. But the first night, uh, there were 400 and some people watching the show, and my job as the mayor was, as mayor of Munchkin City in the county of the land of Oz. I welcome Dorothy to town, and I give her the key to the Munchkin land. And I'll never forget one of the first nights I walked out and didn't have the key, and just stood there when I finished. And I looked at the audience and I looked at everybody else. I don't have the key, and everyone laughed. And it was that moment. It was that, like, hundreds of people just laughing at something that you did that once you get a taste of that or a whiff of that ether, if you will, it's kind of hard to go back. And so I stayed doing it from the time I was 5 years old until I'm 50 now, and I hope I'll keep doing it for a long time.
I'm assuming that, you acted all through junior high if you had a chance, and then
Yeah.
high school.
Hmm.
We all know that theater kids are usually made
Hmm.
fun of because just
Yeah.
we're theater kids.
Yeah.
Did you encounter that too in high school when you were performing, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a great. It's not really. And here's why: is that, like I said, a smaller town, um, and it was fairly normalized that the theater in our town was the arts, right? There was, like I said, the summer theater for adults did three shows during the summer, three big musicals. The youth theater, the Moppet Children's Theater, they did two or three shows during the summer. And then there was the high school program that would do three or four shows a year. So it was a constant part of our community. Not saying we didn't get picked on because we chose to do that. It just wasn't as extreme as other people I know have had to deal with it. And I also was active in sports too. I played soccer and football. I was a terrible football player. I was a place kicker. It was terrible. But I played soccer and tennis and football. So I was kind of moving across a lot of groups. So I didn't get bullied or whatever as much then. It happened later in life, you know, when I got more so when you got into college and people didn't understand why you would want to spend so many hours in the dark putting on makeup and all of that kind of stuff. And for me, the way to deal with it, and the way I've always dealt with it, is it's what I love, it's what I do, it's who I am, it's what I know. And if I allow other people to bully me out of my passion, they win. And it's a matter of not letting those people win. And it's hard. And I think it's one of the reasons, you know, for younger kids today, I taught elementary school for a long time, was to help them understand that creativity and being, I won't say different because it's not different, but thinking differently maybe is nothing to be ashamed of and should be something that's embraced. And don't ever let anybody tell you that what you feel or do is wrong, right? You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to creation of something. And yeah, and there's certain careers that are just acceptable in America. That we say doctor, lawyer, CEO. We encourage people to go into those because we as a society have placed a value on financial stability. Like with financial stability comes happiness, right? But what I think you and I have found is that happiness comes from finding your passion.
Right.
And I think, again, I keep bringing it up to what we're going through now, but I worry about those of us that do want to create, and that is our passion. Right now, we're not able to do that. So we're experiencing a mental impact, an emotional, a physical impact of not being able to teach, not being able to be in a room as a director or an actor working towards telling a story and then ultimately sharing that story with another group of people.
So you traveled to Iran in 1976, and you also lived in Japan. Where did that happen in your time frame?
So I was 6.5, 7 years old when we moved to the Middle East.
Okay.
My dad worked for DuPont and took a job in Isfahan, Iran, and we moved over there. And the goal at the time, I thought I was going to graduate from high school over there. I thought we were going to be there at least 10 years. Islamic Revolution had other ideas. So when we got there, and 2.5 years after we got there, things started getting really bad. It's funny, while I was there, managed to find opportunities to perform in our little school, and we did an Easter play called Hassan Pfeffer, where I was the Easter bunny who was being chased, kind of like the Bugs Bunny cartoon. But that was still a big part of my life for that. But I also got to see a lot of the world. We spent about 6 months, 3 to 6 months on each side of our trip, traveling. And that and living in Iran had a drastic impact on my worldview. Now, I was 17 when I lived in Japan. It was the summer before my senior year in high school. So I was older then, but that's where that fell in that timeline. But
how did the culture affect you? Because I know when I lived in South Korea for 3 years, and I was much older, I was already in my 40s when I did that.
Yeah.
But I was still affected by the culture as an adult, just the way they interact with strangers, you know, and the food and the culture in general, you know, I mean.
Yeah. It's nice to get outside your comfort zone, right? Is that, you know, if you spend your whole life as an American and realize that, you know, fast food, you know, you can drive through somewhere, somebody will hand you food out of a window, through your window into your car. If that is your only experience in life, going to somewhere like Iran or Japan you're right. The food, the way the culture deals with food, the way they interact with each other. Now, Japan is much more westernized now, you know, but than Iran was when I was there in the 70s. But seeing that as a child, like the Iranian people, the welcoming. We were out one night with the family, with my family and some friends, and we walked by this place, and there was a wedding going on, and they recognized us immediately as Americans and, you know, strangers to the country, but they embraced us and invited us in, and we sat around and broke bread, and, you know, my parents drank, and I had tea, and we ate pistachios. I mean, we sat there at the table with this family, celebrating a wedding, and it was beautiful to be embraced that way. We assume, as the big country in the West, that everybody does things the way we do, and that everybody believes the same things we do. Mm-hmm. And seeing at a young age that is not the case, I think was very helpful to me. I mean, the age of 7 to 10 was very formative time. I mean, that's when you're locking in some things. And as a result, I have different views on certain things than my parents did, mm-hmm. Because I saw different things. My sister, who was younger than me at the time, hadn't really hit that formative stage yet. So I have different views on things than she does. And all of it I can trace back to spending time in Europe, Iran, and Japan, and, you know, as we traveled to come back to the United States.
After high school,
mm-hmm.
did you go directly into college, or mm-hmm. did you take some time off and then do it?
I got a full scholarship to Carolina. I was a Moorhead Scholar at Carolina, and I wish I had known at the time that I could take a gap year. But back then, in, you know, the 80s, what was a gap year? Nobody really encouraged gap years. You graduated from high school, you went right into college.
Right.
So I went right in. I graduated from high school in the June of 1988, and in August of 1988, I was a freshman at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
You went to college after high school. Why did you get a degree in Shakespeare Lit and performing and not go for a BFA in theater itself?
I was going to be a lawyer. Ultimately, I thought, you know what I mean? I thought that, and because everybody tells you, oh my God, you're such a great actor, you'll be a great lawyer. And right. I'm buying into what society says, which is, hey, you need a career. You need a money-making career, not this fly-by-night, go out and, you know, do a show. Mm-hmm. And so I started majoring in English, and my concentration was in Shakespearean literature. But while I was there, I found the Performance Studies department, which is through the Communications department, UNC. And that was life-changing because it was theater, but it wasn't the theater that I had grown up with. It was literally taking literature and adapting it for the stage and performing works in ways that forced you to think about text and think about how text is embodied and how text is spoken and how text can be cut up in multiple ways and used differently to tell a story. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. I took every class I could in that discipline.
When you were going to school, what's one mm-hmm. thing about acting that you learned that you didn't even realize about while you were doing it?
Listening. I think it was the moment that I realized that acting is just reacting, and that reacting requires stillness and listening. Like, as a young person doing musical theater, which is its own genre in and of itself, in its own style, but it's like blah, 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 my line, blah, 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 my line, right? There's a formula to it that if nobody has taught you, it just becomes louder, faster, funnier, right? Which is to a certain degree true in a lot of ways, but you don't really connect to it. And I think that it was taking the performance studies classes at Carolina that made me realize how important the connection to text was, and how important the connection to hearing that text was, and how that then spurs, you know, your action, if you will.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned acting is reacting. And, you know, when I was growing up, I don't know if you encountered this too, but basically there were two schools of thought. There was acting is reacting, and then acting is doing.
Yeah.
I sort of combine the two together. I say that acting is reacting and doing, because you can't do something if you haven't reacted to it. And if you react to something, you cannot not do something. Even if it means you standing there dumbfounded without saying anything, that's still doing something.
Right.
And, you know, so I'm glad that you said that acting is reacting, because I think that is so important for actors to understand. Because if you and I are doing a scene together, and for 6 weeks in a row, you've always did it a certain way, right? And then one night, out of the blue, you go somewhere completely different. If I'm an actor worthy of my salt, worthy of what I'm doing, I'm listening to you, and I'm going to hear that difference, and I'm going to react to what you did differently, not do it the same way I always did, because that's how we've been doing it for 6 weeks.
Well, and it also comes to how many times have you done a show and gone backstage and somebody says, "Have you always said that line that way?" Or have you always done that? And what that tells me is that is a person who is just kind of going the paint by numbers approach. Because like you, if you listen, I know what you're going to say, but I hear what you're going to say the way you say it today, not the way you said it 6 weeks ago when we first started rehearsal. I hear it the way Tanner brought it in tonight. So you're very much correct. I always start with acting as reacting, but that reaction leads to doing. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So you do something, I react by doing something. You know what I mean? And it just and it becomes this energy that keeps going. It's like one of those acting games, you know, when you toss the ball of energy around, you know when the ball gets dropped. And on stage, it's the same thing. You know when you're in a scene with somebody or you're watching a play, they dropped the ball. The energy stopped with them. The reaction stopped with them. And it's very hard to generate new energy after it's dropped.
Oh, I totally agree. Did you ever entertain the idea of moving to Los Angeles or New York and try to become a professional actor?
I did move to LA, and I lived in LA, and I did not love LA. I love New York City, but somebody asked me one time. They said I was living in LA and I was bummed out. I was doing theater in LA, Tanner. Nobody moves to LA to do theater, but I was doing a show in Hollywood called Want's Unwished Work, which is a modern verse play. People were flocking to see it. We could have probably run that show forever.
Did you ever entertain the idea of moving to Los Angeles or New York and try to become a professional actor?
I did move to LA, and I lived in LA, and I did not love LA. I love New York City, but somebody asked me one time. They said I was living in LA and I was bummed out. I was doing theater in LA, Tanner. Nobody moves to LA to do theater, but I was doing a show in Hollywood called Want's Unwished Work, which is a modern verse play. People were flocking to see it. We could have probably run that show forever. It still wasn't. I wasn't in TV. I wasn't in film, and I was really bummed out one day. And I was talking to Leanne Heinz, and I remember her saying to me, she said, "David, you want to be famous or you want to be an actor?" I said, "I want to be an actor." She said, "You can act anywhere." And it was that made me move back and realize that that's right. I can do what I want to do here. And I think that what we do here is really grassroots and has a bigger impact than if I were doing it somewhere else. Again, people can say that's, you know, sour grapes or whatever, but it's a choice that I've made and I live with it. I was telling my wife the other day, God, you know, why didn't I go get my MFA when I had the chance? You know, why didn't I do? And I could play that game all day. But the reality is I'm able to live here and work with people that I love and tell stories that I love in a town that I love without having to deal with the stress of the other. And that sometimes I think gives you a freedom. Like as an actor, you can be freer because you're not so worried about the day job in New York or the day job in LA. You're able to actually do what you want to do. It's not that we don't have issues here, you know, but that's why I'm here. I mean, I love it here. Now I've got a family, so I ain't going anywhere.
Well, we're going to take a small little break, and then when we
Okay.
come back, we will continue our interview with David Henderson.
At Actors Training Ground, we believe the foundation of great acting is quality training. Our goal is to teach the actor how to express emotions truthfully and honestly through connection to text, character, and movement. Many actors from Actors Training Ground have been signed by talent agents and featured in independent films, regional commercials, and national cable TV series. We can't promise fame and fortune, but we can guarantee comprehensive training from teachers passionate about the craft. So what are you waiting for? Visit us at actorstrainingground.com and see what we have to offer you. Actors Training Ground. Explore the possibilities.
And we're back with Backstage with Actors Training Ground with our special guest today, David Henderson. David, you've done a lot of shows, but like many actors, we don't get cast in every show that we audition for. As much to our chagrin, we love to be cast in everything that we did. How do you deal with rejection when you don't get a role, and I mean a role that you really want to be in, or a show that you really want to be in, and you just were not picked at all?
Yeah. Anger. You know, I get angry. Not necessarily at anybody in particular, but I have to feel it, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the great line from the Scottish play is when Macduff's children are killed, his family is killed, and they look at him and say, you know, you act like a man, and he says, yeah, but first I got to feel it like a man. And I've always thought about that, is that you have to acknowledge the pain
Mm-hmm.
and the frustration that comes from what we do. You're not going to get it. And then I think you have to spend the time with yourself and go, why? You ask yourself why. And you're never going to answer that question. You're never going to be able to answer that question fully, because, so I was living in LA and I was doing this audition for a Gold's Gym commercial. And if you look at the breakdown, they were describing a guy like me. At the time, I was a lot heavier, blonde, and that was it. That's what they said. They were looking for a short, stocky, blonde guy. I showed up and I walked into a room and there were 25 other guys that looked exactly like me. And they were going to pick one of us. But we all looked enough alike that there was going to be something that one of us had that they went, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't control that. It's just like a director looking for their vision of a certain role. It may not be you. And so you're never going to be able to answer the question of why I didn't get it, unless you were terrible in the audition. But if you do your work and you prep and you go in and you nail it, you're never gonna know. And you just have to take that, live in it, get angry about it, be upset, but then move on. That's the key, is moving forward. Is if we allow that rejection to stop us, you're never going to create, because I've been turned down so many times for things that I really wanted. And then I'm angry, you know, and I'm like, I'll never see that production, you know, or whatever. And then I go and I'm like, yeah, they were right. That person was right. And sometimes I go and go, that's not how I would have done it. But I'm still moving forward, right? And that's the key, move forward.
You know, it's funny too. I had an audition many years ago, not many years ago, 3 years ago or so. I was auditioning for a show. I got called back. So I was very excited. And I walked into the callback. I was the oldest actor there. Everyone was in the 20s. I no more than 25, 26 at the most. And I walked in already knowing I wasn't going to get a role, because there's no way they could have cast it that would have, because it was merely we roll along, and that show works backwards.
Oh yeah.
So I already look older. You can't make me look younger, but you can make someone who's younger look older. Yeah. And so I knew walking into that callback that I am not going to get cast. But on the same token, I did not do less of a callback audition. I put my heart into it. I put my soul into it, even though I knew in the back of my head, Tanner, this is a long shot. This is like, you know.
Well, you said it. You give it everything you've got. I mean, every time you walk out there, you should play hard. You don't, regardless of the outcome, you play hard. You're not going to win every game. I mean, there's a great documentary called The Last Dance, which is about the Chicago Bulls in the late 80s through the 90s. And I have always said that sports and theater are hand in hand. Acting is a full contact sport. And if you look at stuff about the Bulls during that period of time, they left it all on the field. Every time they hit the court, they were playing. But what they did before they got on the court is what mattered. And that's what we as actors do, is what you do before you walk in that room prepares you for when you walk in that room. You might not win, but you're going to play hard. And losing sucks. It does. Yeah. It sucks. But it's part of the game. And you know that loss, you got to get out, put your shoes on again, and do the next one. But every time you go in, if you play hard, eventually somebody's going to say, that dude plays hard. I want to use him, you know.
When you are creating a character, what are some of the processes that you do in order to flesh out this person so that you can embody them?
The first thing I typically do is panic, because there's that moment where you're sitting around the table at the first read through and you go, why the hell am I here? Like, you open your mouth because it's early on in the process and you're like going, I have no idea. Like I think I know. And then you hear other things. You start to hear the play as a whole and you go, I was completely wrong. Or, whoa, I got a lot of work ahead of me. So I think one of the first things that I love to do is hear the play, is literally hear the play. Hear the play out loud. Hear what other people say about my character. Hear what my character says about themselves. Kind of get in from that way. And then it's physical. It's about feet. It's about shoes. How does the character connect to the ground, to the space they live in? Because what we wear, the shoes we wear, affects how we stand. How we stand affects how we talk. It affects how we move. So that's one thing I love, is to get some kind of footwear early on that kind of give me some base to build on. And then it is spending that time with those words so that those words become my words. And I'm not just parroting something that I've read on a page. It's coming from me organically, and a lot of times I'll be riding down the road practicing lines, or I'm out running and I'm practicing lines and I'm saying them out loud. Because if I can do them in all different circumstances, I can do them in any circumstance, right? I do like to, answer the character questions, like Uta Hagen's 9 questions. I do like to take a look at those and sit down and really look at the given circumstances of the play, and then create literally some of the backstory for myself to fill in the blanks. And a lot of times that comes from personal experiences. Is that a lot of times I like to see where I exist in this character, where David exists. I tell my students a lot of times that, there's character and there's actor, and our job is to bring those two as close together as possible. The actor is always in control of the character. Sometimes there are actors that do this, and I don't work that way. It might work for them, but for me, it's that wafer thin line between David and character.
Yeah.
But in that, there's a lot of time of character development that is just spent on my feet, talking, finding physicality. Like, good actors create, great actors steal. There are so many times I've been playing a character and I can't figure him out, and I am at Crabtree Valley Mall and I go, that's it.
Yeah. That
walk, that move. Like, I did a production for Burning Coal years ago when they first opened their new space. We did Inherit the Wind, and I was playing, oh my God, I can't even remember the main role now. But I was way too young to be playing that role, right? But I found a physicality for him that was bizarre. Like, it involved me rubbing my hair kind of in this weird around way, like this. And the minute I did it in rehearsal one time, I think I did it out of frustration in rehearsal. I was like, oh, and I realized that's it. That's it. That physical manifestation of the frustration that he feels fighting to prove to people that, this exists, and it's finding those moments. And sometimes they don't happen until weeks into the process, So it's I know that's a long, crazy answer. I do start with the question, students. So I do start there, but then I sit there and got to figure out, where does David live in this character?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's hard to find David in those things because the character is not me or is so far from me.
Yeah.
But that's when I really love it,
While we had our commercial break, we were talking about one of your more challenging roles as an actor, and you had mentioned I Am My Own Wife, where I believe the actor plays, 40 plus characters?
I think 37.
37. What was it like creating 37 different characters who could not have the same traits as the other ones?
It was very difficult. I had just come out, and I say just, about a year before I had done The Absolute Brightness of Leonard Pelkey, where I played like 12 different characters. So I wasn't unfamiliar with it, but when you triple the number, it gets difficult. And so I tell you, one of the things that was really important there was posture, was vocal quality and posture. They didn't all stand the same way. They didn't all speak the same way. Some had a higher register, some had a lower register. Some were shorter than others. And that simple act of the slumping of the shoulders and the head tilt like that, can create a character that is very different from somebody who's up and like that. And how they relate to the space too is something that I think is really, really interesting to think about as an actor. Now that I say it out loud, is how I react or relate to objects on stage, furniture, how you touch something. I mean, literally, that's as a character. One character would grab it, and another character might pick it up gently, and those kind of things. That's how you do it. That's how I do it. I should say that's how you do it. That's how I do it.
What was one of your most defining moments on stage for you as an actor? not defining you as an actor, but a role that you've done that you were like, wow, yes, I've done it.
Oh, so other than forgetting the key when I was 5 years old and having that moment on stage, there've been many where I've been very lucky to feel that way after a show. One most recently, obviously, was Hamlet. I felt like as an actor, to run that marathon in an uncut version of the show was huge, and to finish it like Fagin, you know, the show ends with Hamlet's death. There's been a sword fight before. There's been all this stuff, and then it ends, and hey, let's bow. Right? You've just run a marathon. Get up and be bow. Another show that I think really impacted me was a show that I did years ago for Raleigh Ensemble players. It was called Lebensraum, Living Space, and it was about the Holocaust. And it was 3 actors playing, again, multiple roles. But it was one of those shows that when you finished, the audience was sobbing. And you knew that the story you were telling, it was about the rise of anti-Semitism and in a current modern time. And if you look at what we're going through now, it's unbelievable that those ideals still exist. Like, people could believe that. And what Lebensraum was able to do was tell a contemporary story looking back and have an impact on the audience. Other shows, I tell you another show, I'm just going to list a few. I did Killer Joe for Raleigh Ensemble players, and I never thought I could have so much fun in a show that was so dark. Like, every night inhabiting that character was one of those things where I was glad to leave him at the end of the night, but thrilled to see him the next night. And to me, that's the beauty of what we do, is creating these characters that when we say goodbye, we're tired. But when we say hello, we're like, yeah, I get to take your journey again, whether it be Hamlet, Charlotta in I Am My Own Wife, any of the roles that are out there that I've played. I want those to be the roles that every night I walk into, and I'm so glad to see them again. And then at the end of the night, I'm tired, and I'm like, okay, it's time for you to go to bed.
I totally get that. David, you are SAG eligible, which means that you can join SAG whenever you want. Obviously, you haven't. For those of the actors out there watching this, why have you not joined SAG?
Well, it really is. So I took a long break from film and TV auditioning to focus on starting Honest Pint and starting a family and marriage and divorce and remarriage. And but when I was working consistently years ago, most of my work was doing industrials and non-union commercials. And I could not justify being a member of a union, even though we're a right to work state, and then doing non-union jobs. So that's the main reason that I haven't joined. Now, am I going to join? Yeah, probably pretty soon, because I'm starting to do more and more film auditions. So I see the value in it, and I believe in the power of the union, and that's more than likely why it is why I didn't join before, is because I was going to work a lot of non-union jobs, and I just didn't feel that I just didn't feel like I should belong to a union and then work on non-union gigs.
Right. All right, well, we're going to take another break, and then when we come back, we're going to finish up our interview with David Henderson.
Woo!
At Actors Training Ground, we believe the foundation of great acting is quality training. Our goal is to teach the actor how to express emotions truthfully and honestly through connection to text, character, and movement. Many actors from Actors Training Ground have been signed by talent agents and featured in independent films, regional commercials, and national cable TV series. We can't promise fame and fortune, but we can guarantee comprehensive training from teachers passionate about the craft. So what are you waiting for? Visit us at actorstrainingground.com and see what we have to offer you. Actors Training Ground. Explore the possibilities.
And we're back with Backstage with Actors Training Ground. Our guest today is David Henderson. David, you are an actor and you are a director. When did you do that shift and decide, you know what, I'm going to dip my toes into the world of directing and see how that goes?
College, I think I started doing some of it in college with my performance studies and some of the things I did with UNC's Pauper Players, which was back then, and then it just kind of found its way in. I will say very quickly, I preferred acting to directing because as a director, there's a responsibility for everything, and as an actor, there's a responsibility for one thing. But I started doing it, and I was given a lot of opportunities to do it. Whether I started directing Theater in the Park, David Wood gave me some opportunities to direct there. RLT gave me some opportunities to direct. And I loved every one of them, and I learned from every one of them.
With directing, how do you approach working with an actor?
I approach it as an actor. Like, I understand what it's like to be on that stage in those shoes and not know sometimes. And I like to give actors an opportunity to find things on their own. Let it be organic. Let them find things. And I've always compared it to, they said Michelangelo could look at a piece of stone and say there's an angel in there, and he would chip away and find the angel. And I think that's what my job as a director is to look at an actor and go, yep, it's in there. And in collaboration, we start chipping away and reveal the angel of that character, or the angel of that story, if you will. And some days you screw up and you chop off a wing, and that's okay. It's a one-winged angel, but you create together. And I think that's the key. I don't want to be the director who's like, do this, do this, do this, do this. I want it to be the director that is in conversation and dialogue with the actor. So that's how I approach it, knowing that that's how I like to work as an actor and how I like that relationship to be.
What's one thing about a director or about directing that every actor should know?
A lot of times people come in and know what it is. Like, I know this story. Like, I know it. I'm going to do this. And I think people need to realize that while we think we know, when you throw a bunch of people into a room together, what we think we know may not be the right thing. And we have to be open to the surprise, open to the opportunity to change what we quote know and find what the truth is.
When you are working with actors in a rehearsal, what is one thing that an actor should avoid doing during a rehearsal? Doing
nothing. Always do something. And I think what I mean by that is it's very, because I'm not a director and I don't like to direct in a way that says, do this, do this, do this, do this. I want actors to do what they think, what they feel, and then together we can craft from there. Otherwise, it's me telling you what to do, and while I may have an idea, it might not be the right idea. And so I think the best thing an actor can do in a rehearsal room is to take chances, is to put themselves out there and let the director and them in collaboration find what that truth is in that moment. So that's something I always think. Also, the simple stuff: be on time, know your line, kind of stuff.
Don't give another actor notes.
Oh, never. Don't ever give another actor a note. I mean, Yeah, let the director handle all of that. And it's because 90% of the time, if the director's not giving the actor a note about something, it's because they're okay with it.
Right.
And it's what they want,
There are a lot of theaters in Raleigh.
Yes.
You decided to open up Honest Pint Theater in 2013.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to open up another theater here? What was your goal? What do you hope to do with that?
At the time, I was going through a divorce and looking for something that I really wanted to do. And it started with the desire to do A Steady Rain with Ryan Brock. And I had years before written down this concept of Honest Pint and the idea of creating theater that gave people what they paid for. It all comes from this standards of measures in the UK. They have what is called an honest pint. It is truly a pint of beer. That's what you get. In America, we don't have a standard measurement for beer. You could get a beer in a pub and it's 12 ounces of beer, 2 ounces a head, 16 ounces of beer, 2 ounces a head. So it's never really an honest pint. And we wanted to do that. And I think that's how it started, was how do I get to this concept of creating theater that meets a certain level of quality and standard that I want. Not that it didn't already exist, but could I do it? Could I create that? Could I, with my friends and with people that I know, start something that could add to the already full choir of voices in the triangle? And if you look at our mission statement, it is our job is to hold the mirror up to nature. Just straight out of Hamlet, right? And I think that that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to create theater that people could see themselves in, whether the good, the bad, the ugly, you name it. And originally, before 2013, before it actually was given birth to in reality, in my notebook, which is sitting behind me on this table over here, I wrote, and I originally, it was going to be all classical. Like I wanted to focus on Shakespeare and the classical canon and reimagining them in new ways. And then I realized, wait a minute, I also want to do all these other plays. So 3 years in, Susanna Huff, she came on as my co-artistic director, which is great because without her, we wouldn't be doing half the stuff we're doing now, because it's very difficult to run a theater company, especially a theater company that doesn't have any infrastructure and we don't have a home. But while we don't have those things, our goal has been and will always be to offer honest, quality theater that audiences get what they pay for. You come in and you see your money you spent on a ticket is on stage. We're paying Tanner. We're paying the designers. We're paying all of the people that are involved with this production in such a way that what you see, your money is well spent.
And just so we all are aware, everyone who's watching, theater is not free. Creating theater is not free. And I know that
not at all.
Right, and I know on your webpage you have a donate button. So anyone wants to donate, please donate. Where can they donate to?
You can go to honestpinttheater.org and there is a donate button and it'll take you to a secure PayPal link that allows you to make a donation to us. We also have a monthly Patreon site that we call them our Pintrons, and it is a monthly donation that helps us sustain and continue to program. And as we figure out what this new normal is, it's going to help because we're going to have to move more into streaming content and finding content that can be produced and performed in these kind of experiences, as well as you and I have talked about this, Tanner, setting up on location and filming a play in some way. And so we need that money to go forward.
Yeah. As an actor, I was lucky to be able to work backstage as well, costumes, stage management, what have you. How important is it for an actor to get experience backstage as well as on stage?
It's invaluable. Without backstage, the theater doesn't happen. Like stage managers, they run everything. You've got designers, you've got lighting designers, costume designers, set designers. All of that is a major part in what you do as an artist and what we do as performers. There's nothing like that moment putting on your costume for the first time and seeing your character come to life in that. There's nothing like walking onto a set that's a fully realized trailer with running water, a stove that works, a toilet, doors. You know, it's like living in a home, and you get to embody that. And then if you look at lighting, you know, what story is being told through the lighting. So you need to know that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you live in your actor bubble, you feel like you're the center of the universe, and really you're not. And when you get to tech week, people go, it's not about the actor anymore, it's about the tech. Well, guess what? Those tech people are working just as hard as you to tell that story through their own medium. And if you understand what they're doing and have done it, it's so much better than if you don't and you sit there and bitch.
Mm-hmm. What advice do you have for any new/young actor just getting into the business?
Do it. Just do it. Audition, find classes, actors training ground, go get the training. And the training is not, when I say get the training, I'm not saying just take classes. I'm saying training occurs by doing as well. Like I learned so much as an actor by being in shows with other actors and learning watching how they work, how they approach a character, or how a director encourages actors to approach a character. Some of the best teaching I've ever had has been from a director and the way they talk about a play. So do it. Get out there and audition when we can. Get out there and read plays. Read them. Know what's out there. And really don't be afraid to do it. That's the best advice. And if you can think of anything else you can do that. Don't do this. Because trust me, this is not for the weak of heart. You know, it is not. But do it. If you do it, you'll be happy.
Awesome. If you could go back in time to your younger actor self,
yeah,
give yourself one piece of advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Be less afraid then.
Great. Awesome.
Be less afraid.
Be less afraid. We are at that section of the show where I get to do my tribute to James Lipton, who was the host of Inside the Actor Studio, yes, and he used to pose these 10 questions that he had gotten from Beveau, who used to interview his guests with these questions. And so I thought that in honor of James Lipton, I would take some of his questions and I would ask my own questions, make it a hybrid of my own 10 questions.
Yeah.
You, David. So here we go. So, David.
Yes.
What is your favorite sound?
Laughter.
What is your least favorite sound?
Crying.
What scares you?
Failure.
What brings you joy?
Theater.
What is your favorite swear word?
Fuck.
What other profession would you like to attempt?
Forensic pathology.
If anything, what is your biggest regret?
Not going to LA and New York when I was a lot younger.
What do you consider your strongest trait?
Hmm. That's a great question. My strongest trait. My charm. I don't know.
Okay. What do you consider your weakest trait?
Too trusting.
To what?
Too trusting.
And finally, what do you want to be remembered for?
Family, and that I left the world better than I found it.
Wow. Thank you. David, thank you so much for being part
Thank you.
of our show today. I do appreciate it. We wish you all the best in future endeavors, and hopefully,
Thanks, man.
I say this to all my guests, but hopefully I'll see you when we are no longer being hidden in our houses.
I hope so too.
Anyway, this has been Backstage with Actors Training Ground. Our special guest today was David Henderson. Until next time, explore the possibilities.